I don't know. I mean, fuck them if they can't take a joke, you know? I'm Skye Plowman, and I mean, I'm a bartender, but I suppose that I'm here on camera because I'm a stand-up comedian. I don't know if I was validated for being funny before I decided that I wanted to be a stand-up comedian. I was pretty young. I came from a really, an artistic, theatrical family. My mom went to school for musical theater, so I was always sort of around that. She took me to see Cats, my first big musical, when I was in the first grade. And I loved it. I loved the idea of being on stage. I also watched a lot of Saturday Night Live, In Living Color at the time. We're talking, this would be 1990. So really, I was really young. I was, 1990, I would have been 7, 8 years old. And I loved it. I loved the idea of being over the top like that. And I told my parents, I'm I want to be a stand-up comedian. And they're like, you mean an actress? No, a stand-up comedian. They're like, a comedian? I don't know, Joan Rivers? I was like, no, a stand-up comedian, like Robin Williams. And I'm sure that they responded poorly to that. Nobody wants their little girl to be like, I want to be a stand-up comic when I grow up. But I did, and I remember being the second grade telling jokes. And most of it was stuff that had really been ripped off of what was on Saturday Night Live at the time. We're talking, it's 1991, so I'm making jokes about Operation Desert Storm. And I don't know if anybody wanted, an 8-year-old making jokes about the Iraq War. But there I was, and the 92 election, I still remember making Ross Perot jokes. And I don't know, I'm 8, I don't know anything about US politics beyond what I've watched staying up too late and watching Saturday Night Live. I was probably a direct ripoff of a Dana Carvey impression from that era, but there I was, and I'm reading the Globe and Mail trying to find new material that I only vaguely understand. So yeah, it was probably too young to decide to be a stand-up comic, but I stuck to my guns. I had no business watching SNL, but my parents were out. They left us with a sitter that didn't really care, and I was always a night owl. I was always a kid that wanted to be an adult. The main thing that I wanted to be when I grew up was an adult, which is ironic because I then hit adulthood and was I want to be a suspended adolescent. Thank you very much. I don't want to ever grow up. But yeah, I watched a lot of late night comedy. I watched a lot of late night talk TV, a lot of sketch, wildly inappropriate stand-up material. Robin Williams, you think when you're a child, Robin Williams is the genie from Aladdin. You do not think of, 70s cocaine-addled Robin Williams just being unhinged on stage for an hour-long special. But I saw it, and that's what I wanted to be when I grew up. Minus the cocaine. I think to a degree, some of it comes with the age of being, in my 40s, and I have a career as a bartender that is quite successful. I have a happy home, I have a partner, I have the safety net there. If I fail at comedy, people don't laugh, then, I don't know, that's on them. It takes away nothing from my life to not be funny to a certain room. Because I know I've been funny to other rooms. I know I'm great dinner table conversation. I'm great to chat with when I'm your bartender. So I just you just take the pressure off yourself. And as I say, part of it is age, part of it is just I'm too old to give a fuck about what you think about me, which seems grizzled and is completely in counter to, the the weird like inferiority complex that all entertainers fundamentally have. But you know, everybody thinks that they shouldn't be doing what they're doing. And it's like, well, I'm doing it, so it'll look worse on me if I don't do it than if I go up and do it bad. So, you know, you just gotta show up. My comedy career in Yellowknife, at least, started off with me emceeing. Like that started off with me moving to Yellowknife, not knowing anybody, and like looking up on Facebook, like Yellowknife gay, and seeing if there was a gay community in Yellowknife. And turns out that there was a lot of them, and they were putting on Pride, and they needed an MC for, you know, one of the days. So I just kind of threw my hat in the ring with like, hey, I'm okay with being out there. I'm comfortable on a microphone. I'll be your MC. And they took a chance on me, even though they had no idea who I was. And I guess I was good enough at it. And that turned into MCing a burlesque show. And that was a real opportunity to just like write material, be funny, be present on stage, without the pressure of it like being all about me. Because as the MC, you're really just facilitating the next act going forward. Like if I bomb as the MC, it's okay as long as the performer that came on after me was well received. And then I was doing that, I was pretty comfortable in that role. Doing burlesque, doing queerlesque. COVID hits, and I started doing bartending videos. And that was another, like, everybody loved those. They liked them, I think, more than I liked them. And they kind of the bartending videos sort of went by the wayside as my bar opened up again. But that meant that they were doing like Zoom comedy shows and that sort of thing. And they're like, oh yeah, don't go and like do bartending for the Zoom comedy show. And I was like, wait, can I do like a bit with it? I'm like, well, if you want to. I kind of had this like running theme throughout one of these Zoom comedy shows that started with me like, I'm gonna make a drink, and I fucked up that drink. I gotta drink the drink. And you know, there's another one later on, and that's a little sloppier. And then the third one just turns into like, this is a vodka soda, and let me tell you what I fucking think about this. So that really took it off. And I mean, if there's ever been a trial by fire on learning to do stand-up comedy, it's doing stand-up comedy into your cell phone camera over a Zoom. And like, like, you know, you've got the laptop put up and, you know, you're seeing faces and they're like, but they're muted. So you just have to trust in yourself that like, yep, I'm funny. I'm funny enough to say the next bit and hope that you're right. And in all honesty, it was COVID, even if I wasn't right. They're not here to tell me. I'm not gonna see them for ages, and memory will soften these things. Plus, in my experience, nobody is gonna go up to you after a show, whether it be online or in person or wherever, and say like, hey, that was a real 6 out of 10 from you, Skye. Like, everybody's gonna be really validating, everybody's gonna praise you. They're all gonna say, oh, you did so great. And it's hard not to counter that with like, no, but you know, I screwed up this bit, I had this line that I forgot to put in there. So, you know, it wasn't all that great. You really just get good at being like, oh my God, thank you so much for saying that. Just allow yourself to have done a good job. And everybody's gonna be their own worst critic. When it comes down to it, sure, there's probably people who privately are like, well, you know, this set was a little loose. You know, yesterday's opening night MC opening was tighter than this one. You know, there's so many different variables when you're doing a live show, that there is, you know, better performances than others. But nobody wants to be the one that's like telling you that. So don't make them. It's just rude to make them tell you that. I mean, I'm very much a sort of like write what I know type of, like, I'm not looking for like set up, punchline. I'm looking at it as like a broader story, and the humor is sort of layering on itself until you get to the apex of it, and then you have this big pop of like, oh, this is the release that we've been looking for with this build and this build and this build. I studied 20th century absurdist theater in university. So I had to read and watch a lot of Edward Albee and Samuel Beckett and Eugene Ionesco. And Albee especially is really, I mean, a lot of it is finding the humor in kind of like rough subjects, like, you know, like dementia grandma, or, you know, baby out of wedlock, or no baby at all, these sorts of things, and finding the humor in well, the absurdity, the depravity of the human condition. And that's sort of where I'm mining from with my material broadly. I don't know if this quite answers your question, but for me, a big thing is not having my notes in front of me, as little as possible. I try to be off book completely. I try not to I know myself that if I keep a piece of paper, you know, on a stool on stage, I am going to look at the piece of paper. If I have notes that I can reference, I'm gonna reference them. And that throws the rhythm off. Like the whole thing is a performance. It's not just like Skye goes up and tells jokes. It's Skye is giving a performance. Like from hi, I'm Skye Plowman and I know that's a really ironic name for a very obvious lesbian, to that's my time, everybody, tip your bartender. The whole thing is an arc of performance. And I look at it more, I look at a routine more like a monologue than like a series of jokes strung together.
But no, I do not work at TD Bank. I am not your kid's drama teacher at St. Pat's. I don't run the fucking golf course. I'm not with the RCMP. I actually don't know if one of the interchangeable lesbians works for the RCMP. I just assume.
Well, that's the other thing is, you know, I'm not gonna joke about things that I don't know, and I'm not gonna joke about things that aren't mine to joke about. Like, believe me, there's lots of jokes that I would love to write for other people because it would be wildly inappropriate and, in all honesty, just not funny for me to tell those jokes. And I will not give any examples of those jokes for the record. But I don't know, the whole Me Too movement, and like, don't get me wrong, Me Too movement, great, you know, thumbs up all around. The backlash that, you know, some comics felt that they were getting, I don't even want to say got, I want to say felt that they were getting, and you had a bunch of, you know, kind of like lazy punching down white dudes being like, I'm being canceled, I'm being silenced. It's like, well, you have a multi-million-dollar Netflix deal, so who's silencing you? You know, just because of the fact that like the freedom of the marketplace means that some people now feel empowered to say, actually, I don't think that Louis C.K. was ever very funny, doesn't mean you're being canceled. It just means that you need to like either accept the fact that your material only lands on certain demographics and you're not gonna be for everybody. And like, that's fine, grow up. If you wanna try and be universally liked, then comedy's fundamentally not for you. Like, be a grade school teacher, you know? Like, but yeah, you get, you know, the comics that are like, I'm gonna get canceled. And like, it's like they want it. Like, you know, Ricky Gervais, you know, hosting, what was it, like the Golden Globes, I think, was when he really, you know, really pulled out all the stops. And it's like, okay, so you're trying to get canceled, but actually you just come off as an asshole. And, well, don't get me wrong, sometimes in little teeny tiny portion, a little nibble of asshole during a set, delicious. Delicious, like, but that's a palate cleanser. That's like going for sushi and all you got was the ginger, you know? You gotta earn that little piece of ginger. it certainly makes it easier when just like going up and knowing that no matter what comes out of my mouth, it's gonna be funny enough. Like, will it land with this particular audience? Oh man, sometimes no. Like, I've definitely gone into rooms and done my bits, and people are like, rude. You know, she's a little edgy for me. You know, lots of lesbians think that I'm decidedly not funny. Because I don't care about political correctness. And that doesn't mean that I'm trying to be some, you know, Joe Rogan comic or something like that. Like, I care about others, and I care about how they move through the world too. Like, it's coming from a place of compassion, but also there's no humor in, you know, gently holding every community. Like, you gotta lay some feet to the fire. You know, you have to find the shitty bits of the human condition. And that might be the fact that, you know, middle-aged white women think that all of the like masculine lesbians in town are the same person. You know, just stuff like that. And if like some, you know, some queer person is like, well, I don't know how I feel about that. You know, everybody is a special snowflake. And it's like, well, obviously they are in real life, but, you know, I'm not doing a TED Talk, I'm doing a comedy routine. So, you know, we'll save my genuine thoughts on the human condition for when they pay me to do a TED Talk. Right now, they paid me to make you laugh. Well, you have a 2-drink minimum at the bar. So I mean, a lot of the time how I write jokes is, oh God, I have a comedy show in 48 hours. What's funny? That is, you know, the procrastination to, you know, terror dump of material. A lot of the time, it like kind of just spills out of me, and like I'll write it, and I'll write it in a conversational way, like the way that I'm performing it, as opposed to like a bullet point, like lady at bar, you know, dragging me on the internet. I totally wasn't gonna mention that. And it was just a case of like, I was feeling really comfortable. It segued off of, you know, talking about tipping your bartender and supporting, you know, your local comedy bar. And then just suddenly words came out of my mouth that was, hey, if you could give me a 5-star review. Also, I think that I run a very tight ship, and I think that I run a great bar, and I think that more people should give me 5-star reviews, or like give the bar 5-star reviews. You don't need to give me you don't need to name drop me, but I've got a staff that works very hard, and everybody should say nice things about them to offset the fact that one person was very upset that I ruined her evening. But to be honest, and I would never respond to this publicly on the, you know, on the comment, because I'm the bigger person. But this is an interview about comedy. So she would not stop talking for 45 minutes. 45 minutes. It like, by the time I was like, no, you cannot scream across the bar here. Like, it is not that kind of bar. I was on my lastity little nerve. She'd already alienated everybody but her friend and this couple that she had met at the bar, who in all honesty, I kind of thought were just, you know, kind of going along with it for, you know, for the plot. Like, I did not think that they were on her team. I thought that they were sort of, you know, bemused by the fact that they were there to have like a quiet drink. And this woman was telling stories about how she'd been thrown off a plane for being too drunk, which is really not the story that you want to tell if you don't want to get thrown out of the bar for being too drunk, you know? Not like directly to me hecklers. Like, I haven't had anybody, you know, yell from the back like, you're not funny, or like, stupid. Nothing like that. I've had, especially at burlesque shows, it's interesting. I've done enough of them now, and enough of the big like multi-night shows where, you know, like Thursday people are enthusiastic, but it's Thursday. They're probably only having a couple of drinks, if that. You know, they're having a good time, but they're having a very like subdued time in the grand scheme of things. Friday is great. Friday can be over the top. Like, you know, they've been waiting all week for this. They're like vibrating with like the excitement of like getting to the show, and they're gonna be loud and they're gonna drink freely. And sometimes you might get somebody that's had, you know, one too many. But mostly they're just like, they're like riding a high. They're happy to be there. Saturday, they're so excited for this burlesque show that they start drinking at brunch. And Saturday can go any number of ways. Sometimes I've had Saturday crowds that were dead. I've had Saturday crowds that were dead because they were too drunk. I've had Saturday crowds that were dead because they were too sober. That was the first thing. COVID did something weird to people's drinking patterns, and as both a bartender and an entertainer, I'm still feeling out how to deal with that. But yeah, that's the night where you'll get somebody sloppy in the back who thinks that we're having a conversation and not that they're listening to a monologue. And I've definitely had to before be like, you know, like, hey buddy, like, you know, this is not a conversation. You know, you're not supposed to actually respond with a story when I'm like, hey, has anybody ever been to Colorado for Christmas? You know, you're not supposed to give me a story about your trip to Colorado. That's not how this is supposed to go. And I mean, there's been times where I've had to be like, you know, like, hey buddy, like, if you want to have the microphone and do 45 minutes of straight material up here, then by all means audition next time.
No, Yellowknife is a dog town because Yellowknife is a lesbian town. That's right. And of course, like, we know this. You might not know this, but Yellowknife actually has the highest per capita number of lesbians in the country, right? And of course it makes sense that this place is lesbian Valhalla, let's be serious. You get off the plane and you get the standard issue uniform, which is of course a plaid flannel, a pair of sensible shoes, Birkenstocks in the summer. You get a little tiny toque that covers the tippity tops of your ears. You get a beat-up Ford F-150, which you can upgrade to a Ford Bronco Sport after your second year with the GMWT. And you get not one, but two rescue dogs, one of which is also a lesbian.